Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Judson Memorial Baptist Church. On behalf of all those who call Judson the spiritual home, we welcome you on this day as we celebrate the life of Michael A. Olson. One of our core values is hospitality, and on a funeral like this, or any funeral you come to, I think that I'll exemplify it this way. There was one time, 5 minutes before the funeral, I walked outside just to see how the parking situation looked with people coming down the roads, and there was a guy on 41st Street just going up and down, pacing, muttering the entire time. And just put my hand on his shoulder and said, "It's going to be okay." I didn't know what all he was going through. It was more of just he didn't know if he could actually come in the doors of the church. There's just that kind of feeling of apprehension. So, if you have any apprehension, we're just here to kind of celebrate on this day of life. Is it going to be difficult? Yes. All funerals, all memorial services are difficult. Saying hello and goodbye, those are two hardest things human beings do. What are you going to have for dinner? Are you going to plant geraniums or roses? You know, you're going to wear black or blue or brown for shoes. All that stuff's easy. But saying goodbye in an official capacity, where everybody gathered with songs and music and prayers and poems, and the people that you love are around you, that's the hard stuff. And you only get through the hard stuff with the people. So here we are gathered. Well, it's only going to never happen again. This assembly of people, the spirits we have, hearts that are broken, tears that are shed, never happened again in human history. And here we are for this time. So all I ask is just open your heart. Let's see where this, the Spirit of God takes us, see where this celebration of life ends. And here for this moment, this time we're gathered, listen to the stories and songs and poems and the words that are spoken and those that are unspoken. And God was present in Mike's life from birth until death, and present with us as we gather this time. course, the lesson is from Psalm 30.
Good afternoon, and thank you for coming. I'm Julie, Mike's middle child. My dad was a spiritual man. He and Helen received spiritual guidance and support from a spiritual advisor, Dick Rice, for many years in their home. One book they studied, and Dad found particularly inspiring, was Songs for Praying, an invitation to hearts by Nancy Merrill. I would like to read part of Psalm 39, clearly marked by my dad, and apropos at this time. Dad relied on the Psalms to calm him, reassure him, and lead him through life's crises. O loving presence, you are with us to the end. Whatever the measure of our days, our life passes by as a blinking of an eye. For the gift of life fades too soon away. Yet how precious are we in your sight. Surely your plan for us is written on our hearts. Surely your angels stand ready to guide us on our way. Surely there is nothing to fear, for you abide within us. You wait patiently for us to awaken to your love.
I'd also like to welcome all of you. I'm Pam, my oldest daughter. We are gathered here today because of love. Our love for my dad, his love for us, and for God. Love has connected all of us. Love transcends. It knows no bounds. It is never ending. And that is very comforting, especially as I am missing the physical presence of my dad, yet knowing his love is forever embedded in me. The poem I'm about to read is a testament to the never-ending love and deep devotion that my dad and Helen share, which was evident to all who know them. My dad and Helen wrote this poem together a few years ago while up on the north shore of Lake Superior, a very special place for them. It is a poem of the precious gift of love and the wisdom that comes from sharing that love for so many years. Love exuding. Our bodies age disguises love as something of the past. It's clear the ardor of our youth was never meant to last. Yet through the years, our heart's connection deepens at the core, surprising us with new affection we never felt before. We've been together long enough for all our faults to show. Forgiving and accepting have enabled love to grow. We know the story of each scar, the source of any grief. We care for them with tenderness to soothe and bring relief. No need to test or prove our love. There's nothing left unsaid. We've done our best to show devotion since the day we wed. No longer in hurry now, we dance a slow embrace. We find fulfillment in each other's love-exuding face. Like hands that fold in silent prayer, we naturally entwine, trusting our togetherness is part of God's design.
Let it go, my love, my truest. Let it sail on silver wings. Lights are twinkling, that's Some give it all in one great flame, throwing kisses as they pass. Oh, let it go, my love, my truest light. Sail on silver wings, life's a twinkling, and that's for certain. But it's such a fine thing. There's a gathering of spirits, there's a festival of friends, and we'll take up where we left off when we all meet again. Just east of Eden, but there's heaven in our midst, and we're never out that far from those we love and miss way out in the water. There's a glory all around, and the wise say there's 1,000 ways to kneel and kiss the ground. Oh, let it go, my love, my truest light. Sail on silver wings, life's a twinkling, that's for certain. But it's such a fine thing. There's a gathering of spirits, there's a festival of friends, and we'll take up where we left off when we all meet again. And we'll take up where we left off when we all meet again.
That's going to be a tough act to follow. That was beautiful. I'm Nick Dimitrenko, and for those who don't know me, I was Mike's favorite grandson. His words, not mine. I was also his only grandson, but as a kid, that nuance didn't dawn on me for some time. As I'm sure many people in this room can attest to, Papa, as us grandkids like to call him, loved having deep philosophical discussions. Normally, that wasn't a discussion topic for us, but that changed when, after college, I moved to India, a country steeped in spirituality. While I was there, we struck up a correspondence, diving into the meaning of life and what happens after. While my thoughts weren't fully formed on the subject, his beliefs were clear. In the days before he passed, I dug up our old emails to hear his voice again, and then stumbled back upon the conversation we had. His words gave me comfort and a sense of peace. I wanted to share them all with you today, in hopes it does the same for you. While he loved the questions, it felt like, to me, he had also arrived at some answers. Here's Papa. I want to say how honored I feel that you asked my thoughts on these profound mysteries of human existence. Of course, neither I nor even anybody knows the answer. Each person's answer ultimately comes from within. It is largely a matter of faith than of knowledge or even wisdom. I have never seriously examined the issues of reincarnation in the sense that suggests one soul may return into this life on numerous occasions and in different forms or different levels of existence. But the Christian belief in eternal life is itself a form of reincarnation. Among the fundamental beliefs expressed in the Apostles' Creed are life everlasting and resurrection of the body. I firmly believe not only in these concepts, but also that eternal life begins here and now. I think it is reflected in one's capacity for peace, joy, a sense of community, and desire to serve others, and in finding deep meaning from the relationships we have, and even just the simplest things. If that is so, I feel that I am in that state now, and have been increasingly for many years, as I learn to let go of some personal goals and accept my own limitations more sincerely. I found that as these subtle changes take place within me, I grow closer to others, and they, seemingly, to me. I believe that every single person is a child of God and has a God-given purpose. We may spend our entire lives seeking to know and to carry out that purpose. We may carry it out quite well without even being able to articulate it. But life is a journeying process built on relationships, openness, listening, caring, serving, loving, and forgiving. By following these guidelines, I believe that anybody can find deep peace, joy, and meaning. I believe that when I pass through the portal of death, I will be met by God, and loved ones will precede me in this experience. And I await the unknown and unexpected with little fear and much hope and faith. Beyond what I have said about being met by loved ones, I do not have much of a preconception about heaven, except that I would then expect to meet others as they move into the sunset, only to find much more light ahead. I leave that reality to God and trust in God's goodness. Well, I'm sure Papa is here watching us from that heavenly place today. I want to give voice to what I believe his final message will be to us all based on these writings. Focus the time you have on this earth on its people, caring for them, serving them, understanding them, loving them. And when it's your time to transition to what's beyond this life, know that I'll be there to welcome you. Love you, Papa.
I'm Brent, Mike's third child. My family and many members of my sister's families are here as well, as you know. And hopefully we can all greet you in the fellowship hall after this service. My dad cherished friendship and community, so your being here today is a special tribute to him. I must say this is a slightly intimidating exercise. After all, the public speaker in our family, the one who thrived in these settings was my dad himself. He absolutely loved it, and he was always fun to watch. Years ago, my wife Kathy and I were at a wedding in England for one of my best friends. And the wedding reception was at this stereotypically grand British wood-paneled room, kind of like this, with long wooden tables connected in a huge square with an elevated head table, think Game of Thrones. And a man dressed in formal British garb strode in the room, took off his shoe and slammed it against the wall, instantly quieting the room, and announced that I would be saying grace. My ever-forgetful friend, the groom, had forgotten to mention this detail to me. So after an initial moment of panic, I took a deep breath. And I channeled my dad. I had heard countless impromptu heartfelt prayers from him throughout my whole life. I just needed to give it the same level of thoughtfulness and the same authenticity he would. And I kind of nailed it. Because I had been watching him do it for years. So I'll do my best to channel him again today. Today is a sad day, but there's also much to celebrate. Because my dad led a remarkable life. In many ways, it's a classic American tale. Challenges followed by triumphs with the hero demonstrating a relentless positive spirit. Tumultuously born in 1937 to a young mother who had a persistent suitor to hide the otherwise scandalous circumstances of her pregnancy. Raised initially by his maternal grandparents, a Scandinavian Lutheran minister and his dutiful wife, in a small Minnesota town. Later, growing up in South St. Paul with his mother and her new husband, who my dad knew as his father, welcoming 3 siblings while excelling pretty much in everything he did during high school. This led him to the University of Minnesota, where he graduated at the top of his law school class, followed by a well-heeled legal career at the premier Twin Cities law firm. At some point, though, the mysteries of his origins reemerged, probably around the same time as his doubts about the life he was leading. Or maybe they were there all along, and a life pivot began. This pivot ultimately became a journey, and the journey became a mission. The story truly writes itself, and in my dad's case, thankfully, he did write it down in a memoir he called Love the Questions. It's a wonderful testament, and we actually have a copy for you to peruse in the fellowship hall. And today I'm going to talk about the times in his life when the questions were biggest. As I alluded to earlier, my dad spent his early childhood living with his maternal grandparents in the town of Henny, Minnesota, while his young mother worked at a clothing store in the nearby town of Fergus Falls. These years were fundamental to who my dad was for the rest of his life. His minister grandfather was his forever mentor and role model. In addition to giving my dad a way too early introduction to coffee, I cannot understand the impact seeing his grandfather tend to the parish and give his weekly sermon to the congregation, all from the front pew, had on my dad. It instilled in him a deep sense of living a life of mission and purpose, but along with the requisite humility and modesty. In the summer of 1959, my dad was chosen by the YMCA as one of 9 students from around the country to take part in a cultural exchange with the USSR. Today we know them as Russia. This was a huge honor, but as you can imagine, also one fraught with trepidation, as this was a time of very heavy tensions between the 2 countries. And for my dad, it was truly an adventure into the unknown. He'd never been outside of the U.S. The highlight was several weeks at a Soviet sports camp, where his favorite parts were the private conversations he had with his Russian counterparts, learning about their lives and aspirations and sharing his own. He left that trip thinking that we're all more the same than we are different. And if we can focus on that, we can find ways to bridge differences and heal divisions. The adventure opened the world to my dad and my dad to the world. It gave him his love of travel, of cultures, and a deeper love for people. He always said he never would have pursued practicing international business law without this experience. And while he always had a natural tendency to want to help people, from this trip, he began to develop deeper life perspectives on peace, justice, and equity. Soon after that trip, my dad graduated from law school. He joined the Dorsey law firm in Minneapolis, got married to our mom, and then had 3 kids, all by 1967. He was quickly working his way up the law firm ladder, but something was still missing. Eventually, his marriage to our mom ended. And this was a difficult time, but in many ways, this change started to rebirth in him. Now, I should note that my dad and my mom handled their divorce with unparalleled grace. And in tandem with their new spouses, they really did put us kids first. They even memorialized that objective in their divorce agreement as their #1 priority. They did everything they could to co-parent, to not let their otherwise painful situation interfere with their relationship with us. And remember, this is 1974 Minnesota. Divorce at that time still carried a lot of stigma. And true co-parenting was a bit of novel concept. As it turns out, the divorce paradoxically reinforced the importance of family in my dad. He coached all three of us in various little league teams, as well as sharing his lifelong passion for the Twins, the Vikings, and the Gophers. And even though we officially lived with my mom, we spent parts of every week with him. We always had our own rooms in his house because he wanted us to know it was our home too. And we went on a lot of amazing vacations. We did an annual cross-country ski trip to Telemark Lodge in Wisconsin. We made a trip to the John Gardner tennis ranch in Arizona. We had an incredible national park adventure out west, a couple very memorable trips to Europe, and even a notorious camping adventure to Boundary Waters, soaked by rain and infested by mosquitoes, but filled with lasting memories. We honored special occasions with exotic meals at restaurants like Fujiya, where we thought it was so exciting to sit on the floor and watch meals being cooked at the side of the table. My dad loved to watch the expressions on our faces. And while no one would ever call him a comedian, he had what I would call a challenged sense of humor. He surprisingly became a bit of a prankster during his years. When he did smile or laugh, that meant he had touched his heart, not just his funny bone. During this time, my dad also met Helen, who became his beloved wife and forever love. Helen fully embraced the searching that my dad felt he needed to do and joined in his journey. And Helen, my dad, found his true soulmate. She was the yin to his yang. Now, being several years younger than my dad and coming of age in the late 60s, Helen also helped usher my dad into the wilder side of the 70s. I have vivid memories of his various alternative lifestyle pursuits, some fun, some slightly scary. Learning and practicing TM, exploring creative writing with his poet friend George Colley, reading Zen and the art of motorcycle mechanics, attempting to laugh at Helen's favorite Woody Allen films, and of course Harold and Maude and Young Frankenstein. Living in a duplex in ultra-hip uptown, and constructing what was probably Minneapolis' first home conversation kit in his new townhouse. Becoming an early adopter of the man purse, or man bag as he forced us to call it. And of course, a lot of crazy hair, sideburns, and beards. He really went for it. And yet somehow, he was still crushing it at the law firm at the same time. Although his father, Doyle, tragically passed away at an early age, my dad was always there for his mother and his three siblings, Gary, Ken, and Melanie. Feeling the responsibility of the eldest child. Over the years, he helped each of them cope with their own life struggles, both financially and spiritually. This is really the beginning of his role as family patriarch, which he lovingly embraced in his grandfather's footsteps. Through these experiences with them and with us, he learned a true appreciation for both giving and receiving forgiveness. Now, his role as family patriarch continued through multiple generations. He loved his grandchildren and his great-grandchildren, and they loved him. He was always eager to meet them at their level, which usually meant before. And there could never be too many tea times, dress-up clothes, or games of course. And Kathy and I were lucky to have my dad and Helen in D.C. often during our kids' early years. And both Olivia and Jacqueline absolute love when they came over to our house. I can distinctly remember little Olivia running to the front door when Papa came over, grabbing her by the hand and taking him to the playroom so he could be pantomime, which basically just meant making silly frozen facial expressions at her so she could laugh over and over again. Now back to the questions. So the duality between working at the law firm, which now included frequent trips to the Middle East and the Far East, and pursuing the bigger life questions was pretty stressful and a difficult needle to thread. At some point, it was clear that this coexistence wasn't going to work. So he either had to hunker down and focus more on his legal career, or pursue the road less traveled. And door number 2 was. Well, eventually, he left Dorsey, and after a couple of short stints at other law jobs, he realized he was still living with only one foot in the door. And again, like the divorce, making this kind of life change in the mid to late 80s was not standard operating procedure. I'm quite sure most of his law partners couldn't really relate to what he was doing, leading at the peak of the legal career for some abstract life quest. But next to finding Helen, it proved to be the best decision he would ever make. He was going to follow his heart, focus on doing good and living with purpose. So he got a master of divinity degree, and then spent much of the rest of his life working on several passion projects, most notably the initiatives of Change, an international interfaith NGO dedicated to peace and reconciliation. He and Helen formed lifelong friendships with people from around the world, driven by the same passion for service. In particular, the Molina family from El Salvador, who stayed with my dad and Helen in the early 90s when their lives were at risk at home and became family. In early 1993, my dad asked me if I would accompany him on a trip to El Salvador for my seat. And I got to see up close his passion for the mission. I got to see why he changed careers. And one of the highlights was when he was asked to give an extemporaneous speech to the law school in San Salvador in Spanish. And while Helen had been helping him brush up on his Spanish skills, it wasn't what you would call bilingual. But he wasn't going to say no to the chance to speak, and more importantly, a chance to connect. So I sat in the back of the classroom and watched him speak and gesticulate in Spanish for what must have been 20 to 30 minutes. And while I only stood a part of it, I know it was great, because he had the audience's rapt attention the entire time. As I mentioned at the beginning, my dad's birth was shrouded in a bit of mystery, and for a long time he suspected that Doyle, who he loved dearly, was not his birth father. He finally confronted his mother when he was in his early 40s. And she relented, telling him the full story along with the name of his birth father, a man named Howard Lee from Purpose Falls. He struggled with what to do next and decided to contact Howard directly by mail to see if he'd be willing to meet, and perhaps somewhat surprisingly, Howard agreed. They met once in 1983, spending much of the day together sharing their personal histories, with Helen pointing out a number of shared physical characteristics. And while Howard was very glad to meet my dad, he requested at that time, for personal reasons, that they not maintain ongoing contact. And then tragically, just a few years later, Howard passed away. However, at his deathbed, he asked a good friend to tell my dad he loved him and he was proud. Over the next couple decades, my dad informal tabs on Howard's family, and to do a job, but also wanted to observe Howard's wishes. By 2011, we realized that Howard's eldest son, Tom, was the only surviving member of Howard's immediate family. And after some reflection and input from Helen and the rest of us, he decided to reach out to Tom. In the same way he reached out to Howard via letter. Almost immediately, Tom responded enthusiastically. And from that point onwards, my dad and Tom, along with Helen and Tom's wife, Diane, were fast friends. They bonded over shared perspectives, storytelling, the love of sports, and formed an unstated kinship. And in no time at all, they were calling each other brothers. Tom and Diane introduced my dad and Helen to the extended renewal plan, and soon thereafter, my dad and Helen brought the rest of us into the fold, culminating with a big family reunion in the summer of 2018, where I don't think my dad stopped smiling on the weekend. Well, I didn't know it at the time. That reunion also offered us some of our first clues in my dad's battle with dementia. Just little songs. Dementia is a disease that we see my dad's experience that slowly but surely chips away. It's some of the basic faculties necessary for independent living. But that's not a discussion. What is important is that while dementia may have stripped away some of my dad's rich vocabulary and intellectual complexity, he never lost his core attributes. To the very end, he was the same sweet, generous, and loving man with a huge heart. So, I'll end with one of my favorite memories of my dad. Involving go to basketball games in the late 70s and 80s. He loved to do the U of M chant and would always sing at the top of his lungs. And he loved to yell at Bobby Knight, too. Well, the Gophers were actually decent most of those years. My most lasting memory of those going to those games with my dad, we hustled through the crowd and we burst out of the doors of Williams Arena into the bitter cold and the snow and the ice. My dad would inevitably turn to me and say, "Let's run." And we'd sprint, not jog, the several blocks to the car. It was a little bizarre, but I loved it because he loved it. In many ways, it was an ode to loving the questions. The destination was the car, but it was not nearly as fun as our run. I'll just run in the car from my dad.
I hadn't realized until today the added pressures of delivering remembrances of a man with such great work for his students. Skill that's obviously been passed on through the generations. I'll try to do you proud. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Jim Body, Helen's little brother. In point of fact, I'm a little brother to all of my four sisters, who continue to spoil me to this day. That's why I get to share Helen's family memories. of our beloved Mike. As these are the body family remembrances, I think a bit of background may be helpful in understanding just how, possibly even why, Mike's family honors became so wonderfully melded together. Mike was actually acquainted with our father John Body through their mutual membership in ecumenical groups before he and Helen were involved at all. So you could say it was preordained that Mike and Helen should find and complete each other. And it's no coincidence that we find ourselves here today in Judson Memorial Baptist Church. The Body family have been active members here for generations, starting with our grandparents. Church community was a pillar in both families and central to Mike and Helen. In the early to mid-1970s, I was about 13 when Mike became such an important part of our expanding family. He and Helen enthusiastically included me in their relationship. They played a pivotal role in shepherding, facilitating, and celebrating my relationship with my first love, Jill. She even played Morning Has Broken on her cello for Mike and Helen's Love on the Rocks wedding on the rocky shores of Lake Superior. She and my girls have graciously accepted to do the same today, were it not for some serious health concerns that kept them away. She's very much better and we'll keep her in our prayers. Mike had a very special relationship with our girls, Cassie, Nikki, and Katie, and even chaperoned them at my marriage to Barb in Las Vegas. For me, Mike was the brother I never had, and also somewhat of a father figure. He taught me by example how to be generous and how to be a good and loving divorced father, always respectful of your relationship with your children's mother. In collaboration with the rest of the family, we share some of these reflections. Mike always had an expansive definition of family, and that dovetailed with the Body's family definition. We grew up with a very loose view of what family means. Our family umbrella was big and wide and ever growing. And once someone was part of it, well, they were in forever. So it was natural for us to embrace Mike and his children and grandchildren as extensions of our Body family. Celebrating many life events together for approximately 50 years. As Mike and Helen's relationship grew and they eventually married, Mike became more of a brother than a brother-in-law to all of us in the Body cousin bunch, including sisters Kathy, Ann, Janet, and cousin Margaret, and me. Sister Kathy said, Helen and Mike were the most loving couple she ever knew. They called each other my love all the time. And they lived it. From Mike, we Bodies learned a wider approach to the world. As Mike and Helen followed their strong moral compass, working for global peace and justice through the initiatives of change, they embraced a broad meaning of community and created a truly expansive global family. They introduced Annie's family to the larger global perspective, and her family became acquainted with many of Mike and Helen's friends and global family from initiatives of change. Anne's family hosted several of Mike and Helen's extended family from Nicaragua and El Salvador, and remain friends to this day. Closer to home, Mike and Helen also never missed an invitation to commemorate a high school or college graduation, birthdays, or marriages. Many times traveling to Friendship, Wisconsin for celebration of Janet and Chuck's 3 sons and extended family there. Ann's girls and son Joe grew up with their dearest Tia Helen and Tio Mike as integral parts of their family. In Mike's capacity as minister, he officiated at Jenny's beachside wedding in Mexico and presided over a Good Family Friends memorial service. Over the years, Helen and Mike frequently brought many of us together to enjoy the beautiful North Shore for camping, cross-country skiing, hiking, known fondly as adventure hikes with Mike, rock hunting, participating in Annie's inspired dragon boat racing, canoeing, and playing games at night, and taking in the solitude while listening to the waves of Lake Superior hit the shores. Many will fondly remember Mike inviting us into his extravaganzas, celebrating his deep love for Helen, renting Dudley Briggs' brave new workshop for her 30th birthday roast, holding a costume high-key in the St. Paul Hotel for her 50th, where my daughters play violin, and gracing her 70th with a tea party hosted at Annie and Wayne's home. Mike and Helen hosted many special gatherings at their homes over the years as well, and Mike was the charming host to the very end. Our spouses each enjoyed Mike's kindly and generous welcoming spirit and viewed Mike as a dear family member. Wayne describes Mike as a fearless seeker of the answers and a good guy to boot, and says he is happy, lucky, and proud to say he was a friend of mine. Sister Ann shares, Helen and I have been best friends and soul sisters since we could walk, sharing all of life's milestones intimately. So it was natural that as Mike and Helen met and their relationship grew, Mike began to play a central role not just in Helen's life, but in mine as well. Mike's seeking, questioning nature was apparent early on when he spoke at my adult church group at Lake Harriet Christian Church, and he challenged us to question while vigorously pursuing our own path. From the start, I felt a deep connection with Mike, and he became a beloved friend and soul brother, a fellow seeker, a teacher, a role model, and a shared life traveler. Mike always was an inspiration to me in his courage and tenacity, in the deepness of his faith, in his inclusive worldview, and his questioning spirit, and his example of love in action. Seize the day. Live each day to the fullest. Be present in each moment. These words exemplify for me how Mike lived his life. Like her wonderful son Joe, Ann says Mike is her other best example of how to truly be present in the moment. Now some concluding heartfelt words from all of us. Toward the end of his time, despite losing many of his words, the messages Mike exemplified were simple in form, but remained true to his essence. His desire for connection to others and something greater than himself never left. He never lost Mike the host, Mike the family man, Mike the ambassador, Mike the humble servant. He continued to show his caring nature, greeting everyone with a smile who offered one to him, giving a comforting touch to anyone in distress, and to the end saying to many that they were a good person. Mike lived the questions with humility and gratitude. He modeled how to accept what life brings with courage and grace, to have deep personal connection with and caring for others, and to listen to God's guidance on this journey. He left an indelible imprint on each of our lives and on the next generation of this big, complicated, beautiful family he nurtured, inspired, and helped to create. We are forever grateful for the gift of Mike in our lives. close with a reading from, that Helen suggested, from Return of the Bird Tribes by Ken Carey. Love, like energy, cannot be destroyed. Wherever love has found its way into dimensional expression, it leaves emotional alterations in the texture of the universe. Traces like multicolored etchings in the ethers. Wherever two people have loved, wherever a human community has shared in the expression of love, whether it was yesterday or 10,000 years ago, that love is still present, and it can still be experienced.
I've appreciated the intentionality of the family and friends and those who love and do mindful about trying to get his legacy right through all of this. So just remember the closing words of the Gospel of John. This is the disciple who is testifying to these things. It is written in, and we know that his testimony is true. But there are also many other things that Jesus did. If every one of them were written down, I suppose the world itself could not contain the books that would be written. You know, a life such as Mike's is never going to be captured in service, be captured over lifetimes. So I encourage you throughout the day that you're together, you know, you're going to see somebody and something's going to trigger a response or a memory that you didn't know was there. And so take advantage while you're here in this time that we have. And just took a reading from the book of Corinthians. Now you are the body of Christ and individually members of it. And God has appointed in the church first apostles, second prophets, third teachers, then deeds of power, then gifts of healing, forms of assistance, forms of leadership, various kinds of tongues. Are all apostles? Are all prophets? Are all teachers? Do all work miracles? Do all possess gifts of healing? Do all speak in tongues? Do all interpret? But strive for the greater gifts, and I will show you still a more excellent way. Lessons and lessons. In a few moments we have here at this time, I want to offer a reflection on Mike's life, or maybe a reflection of God's presence in Mike's life as the power of service. You know, there are two kinds of people that I'm always uneasy about, especially when they are members of churches. Engineers, because they don't understand nuance, and lawyers, because they ask too many questions. Okay? And lawyers are trained in such a way that you're going to look for the smallest, hole in an argument, and you're just going to throw all the energy at that little hole until you are, you're just left in a puddle on the floor. There's only a couple ways you can remedy it. One, you can go to seminary, like Mike did. That usually is a good trick. Two, you can marry someone with a seminary, which some people do. Or you can join Judson. I mean, it seems like there's something about the lawyers over here that figured out a way to do that. Now, we know from the Gospel that Jesus asked approximately 310 questions. He only directly, he was asked 173. He only directly answered 9. So questions are going to be more on topic than answers. And you're just going to have to be comfortable with that. And you can say, well, I really want answers. I'm like, really? You think you're better than Jesus? Right? So, there you go. So be comfortable with the questions. Where they take you. Because then maybe who knows where it's going to lead. I mean, you can see Mike's life. This is not someone who just went from A to B. There's lots of side journeys in it, and we're thankful for those side journeys. And all of us are here, and some ways have been blessed by his presence. It was almost like when you were kind of in like a Minneapolis version of Mr. Rogers, right? He didn't talk real fast. He listened to you. He got down there on eye level and just welcomed you into his world. He didn't have a theme song, but I bet, he probably should. Kind of walking around. He probably should. His spiritual advisor, Dick Rice, said this, that Mike was never in a community where he didn't feel like he was the mayor. And not in a bad way for power, but about how you're going to use your power for good. And in fact, Mike kind of on the back and flipped the whole narrative of being a lawyer. You were going to ask the questions not to try to find the one weakness in somebody else, but to try to find out the strength of it, and to bring that up. And how many of us ever, after being in the presence of Mike, didn't feel better than what you did before? Even in those last days, that last visit, when you're thinking you're going there, you're going to say goodbye, you're going to feel this drain, but there was this moments of lucidness, of just compassion and grace of being. You felt better when you left than when you entered. And that is a very special human being. And you don't just wake up one day and become that person. That you use a training, of discipline, of in your mind saying, today I'm going to be the best person possible. Or today I'm going to be this person who's going to realize that there's power in weakness. Or there's much more power in loving someone and forgiving them than thinking ill of them. You make those kind of deposits in your own life and the other lives, and everybody around you is a better person. Everybody around you experiences a circle of compassion that just got wider and wider. And that's why it's hard to say goodbye to somebody like that. There's plenty of funerals I've been at where everybody in the room was just glad that the person was gone and out of their lives and maybe erased from their memories. But on a day like this, when we're saying goodbye to someone who makes us feel that much better about ourselves, who made that circle of compassion that much bigger, who in some ways looked inside of us and saw things that we didn't see in ourselves and wanted to make sure that that was present. That's why it's hard to say goodbye. And that's why it's hard to think that will never happen again. Mike leaves a charge to everyone to. He blessed you. He gave of himself to you. That was a gift that was freely given, that came with a lot of pain in its own self, a lot of discipline, a lot of work. And the charge is, how are you going to bless those around you now? That Mike is not anymore. Physically. You don't have the words, you don't have the sound, you don't have the touch. How can you continue to be a blessing in the deposits that he made in your life that you're going to share through your life? There aren't quick answers. There isn't a little simple formula. And your life may be upended if you try to actually practice this. But you have an example of someone who took a huge risk upon risk upon risk upon risk. And in all those risks, continue to exude love and compassion and grace. And I charge you to do the same. I invite you to sing. We're going to sing Amazing Grace. Verses 1, 2, and 3, and then repeat the first verse. And let the women straight from it and sing to lead us again in beautiful.
Like me.
Before we read an intro in the Lord's Prayer, I just want to say one word about the reception that will be happening afterwards. I invite you all down there. And if you haven't put on the name tag, I would invite you to do so before you go down. What a wonderful idea by the family. And I think it just exudes, again, the hospitality and Mike's life. It just kind of, here we are. Make sure you know each other. The name tags are next to it, even better. Next time you go down, make sure you get a name tag. I think that's just a wonderful idea. Make sure, but you don't want to be embarrassed about trying to figure out who somebody is. And, you know, and you think, well, they know me, come on. This is a selection from Mike's memoir. I'm going to read it, and then we're going to say the Lord's Prayer together. And as always happens, we're going to say it in the version that's most suited to you. And even if we got up there and we all practice it in the same version, as soon as we start to pray, we're going to say whatever you want. So whatever you're comfortable saying, say it that way. Grandpa and Grandma have clearly been the most influential role models in my life. Somehow, in my young innocence, I came to take quite literally my grandpa's preaching and my grandma's nightly recitation of the Lord's Prayer as she tucked me in bed. In the absence of any clear earthly option, I came to believe, in a mystical sort of way, that my real father was God. Even at a young age, that nascent conviction led me to seek God's direction and assurances in my own quiet way, and grew into a deeply personal, lifelong connection with God. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. We commit Mike's loving memory into the care and tender mercy of God, the creator of the universe. We say goodbye on this day and say hello to a new life without him in our presence. Go in peace, and may the blessing of God, the creator, Christ the Redeemer, Holy Spirit, the Comforter, be with you and remain with you now